Hey Fiends, it's the mad scientist Anthony Bowman here, just popping in at the top of the episode to give you a little bit of a news update. So just wanted to let you know, next week we're going to have 2 episodes coming out on the feed. Thursday at the normal time, you'll still get your regular episode continuing our Hammer series, so we'll be talking about the horror of Frankenstein. But then before that, Sunday night / Monday morning, we will be doing a special bonus episode where we're discussing the new Boris Karloff documentary that just came out on Shudder called The Man Behind the Monster. And to do that, we'll be joined by a very special guest. We'll have Jason Stein, one of the hosts from the Dads from the Crypt podcast, and he'll be on there with us to kind of discuss what we liked and what we didn't about the documentary. And, you know, if you've not seen it, like I said, it's on Shudder, so it's a good opportunity to catch it there before the episode. But for now, enjoy Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed. Take it away, Spooky Piano Man.
The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the 2 great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you.
Hello, and welcome once again to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist, Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
The door hidden behind the suspicious wallpaper known as Eric Velasquez. My pronouns are also he, him.
Oh, yeah, I can't wait to get to that. But, yeah, I guess real quick before we get into it, we should do our little request. So, you know, if you're listening and you're enjoying what you're hearing, definitely reach out to us in one way or the other. You know, you can rate or review us on whatever podcast platform you prefer. I think Spotify just recently added a way to rate podcasts on there, I believe. But, you know, there's also Apple or wherever else. That is definitely helpful.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to us at our socials. We're pretty much at Gmail and at Twitter at Frankencast.
At the Frankencast.
The
yes.
Frankencast, yes.
Yeah. Frankencast was already taken, so we're the Frankencast, but that's all right.
Yep. And we're also on YouTube if you want to watch us there, /listen to us there.
Yeah, and it's really funny. I don't know why. Like, there are some episodes that have, like, tons of viewers and some that have, like, none. So I don't know who's jumping in there, but, you know, I'm happy some people are listening, however they're finding it.
And just let us know what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to talk to you. We've been hearing, you know, getting little comments here and there from some people on Twitter and stuff, and it's always fun to just talk to people about Frankenstein. That's why we're doing what we're doing.
That's right. And once again, this time, though, Frankenstein must be destroyed.
Yes. And he really should, like, he kind of sucks in this movie.
So, we're gonna let you know, content warning, some stuff goes down, and if you're not a fan of forced intercourse, is that the safest way to say it?
Yeah, there is a scene of sexual assault in this, and yeah, from Frankenstein, from the doctor. Yeah,
the most villainous Frankenstein. Is this the worst we've seen him?
Oh, I think so for sure.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Like, there's no action there's a little action Frankenstein, but after that moment, there's no cheering for this guy.
And we kind of like briefly mentioned it at the end of the last episode, but every one of these Hammer Frankenstein movies has been directed by Terence Fisher, which is so strange. You know, like with like the Universal ones where it's like a different director from movie to movie a lot of the times, it makes sense that there would be like wild changes in like the timeline and the way that the characters are portrayed. But this is the same guy through all these movies, just like, I guess just approaching the story from different angles and just, you know, each one, he's treating each one like it's its own standalone thing, which I guess is kind of cool. But like in this case, yeah, he does not make a likable Dr. Frankenstein at all.
Even with the first 3 movies in the Hammer series, there's been at least a thread of continuity. Even the thread started to become unraveled in the fourth one in Frankenstein Created Woman, and now it's just cut.
Oh yeah,
Totally
it's
different.
completely loose.
Yeah. But also, we're going to be joined by a lot of friends that we're going to see a few of in the future. We're also are going to be introduced to a few friends that we've, already met in different forms. Yeah, we've got Thorley Walters and Inspector Frisch, whereas last time he played Dr. Hertz. And in the most... man, I don't even know why they had this point. Like, I guess to ramp up tension, but we'll get into that later. Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Like, that character, like, he's a fun character, but he does not really need to be in the movie at all.
Does nothing. But, in the future, we're also going to be hanging out with Veronica Carlson, who, as in this movie, is Anna Spangler. I almost said Angela Spangler. I don't know who that is, but if you're Angela Spangler, then good on you. But, she's going to be hopping in later down the road in another Frankenstein movie that we'll be talking about coming up.
Yeah. So we start out, and it's kind of like they kind of do like a mystery thing for a little bit. Like, there's like dark city streets, and you've got this like shadowy figure that you can't see his face. He's like either shown from a distance or like shown like below chest height. Like, you just see like legs kind of walking around, and they're carrying this like metal canister,
kind of like a hat box.
Yeah. The similarity there will definitely comes into play here in a few minutes, but it's a weird canister. It almost kind of looks like a gas can, but it's not really. It's just like a metal hat box, I guess. But and ultimately the figure ends up hiding in a doorway in front of a doctor's office, Dr. Otto Heidecker.
Right. And we meet the doctor as he steps out of his coach, and I'm thinking, is he adjusting himself, or is he checking his watch?
It could be We're
gonna say both.
Maybe a little bit.
He's trying to be sly about it, but he's not sly about it.
It's a good reason to put that there. You could kind of camouflage. I was just, my watch, just checking my watch.
Exactly.
But unfortunately for him, this is his last act on Earth. As the shadowy figure steps out and like gets him with a sickle.
Yeah, just sickles him.
And you get like this nice shot. You don't really you see the sickle swing, and then you just see the doctor's office sign just get sprayed with blood.
Yeah, right. This one has the most gore, I think, at least the most gratuitous gore that we've seen so far.
Oh yeah, and it's that good like bright red paint hammer blood that you just love.
Oh yeah, but immediately afterwards, we have a thief that's jauntily carrying a sack of stolen loot, presumably lamps or candelabras and things like that. Maybe some good silver, and he's trying to break into this house.
Yeah, and it's this really kind of like abandoned, rundown looking house. Like, he looks. It kind of reminded me of, is it the second movie where like Frankenstein comes back to his home after being exiled and everything is just like wrecked, and he's like so mad about it.
Oh yeah, where he gets like unreasonably mad. I think so. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But so in this case, it turns out that like the house is sort of like strategically abandoned or made to look abandoned, because our mystery man enters the house while the thief is in there, and then he kind of like has to try to hide really quickly. And as always happens in those scenes, he's doing good for a while, and then like has to stumble and bump into something and make a noise, kind of similar to the dandies in the last movie when they were hiding in the pub.
Yeah, these people aren't good at hiding. They just cause all kinds of noise. As a matter of fact, that's going to be something that keeps going. We're going to get to that eventually.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Our thief friend eventually stumbles on what looks like kind of a cryo tube, basically, or a cryo box.
Yeah.
There's a body frozen in this box.
Yeah, it looks similar to our fish tanks that we've seen, but in this case, it's ice instead of water or whatever chemicals those fish tanks were full of.
Oh yeah, and by the way, our mystery man is slowly sneaking up the steps as our thief is, of course, doing all this stuff, causing all this noise.
Yeah, and so eventually, he's hiding around all the science gear, and then the mystery man shows up and attacks. And we see his face, and it is a strange, sort of monstrous face. It's like, it almost kind of looks like Freddy Krueger. It's like bald and like scarred up. It like, yeah, it looks damaged in some way. Like it's just, it looks like a burn victim. Like there's just, you know, it's all kind of scarred.
And when I saw this, I was like, oh, this is from the neck down. I was like, oh, this is Frankenstein. It's got to be Frankenstein. They're just hiding the face for the reveal, right? And then no, this face pops out. And of course, he's pockmarked, and
like I was like, oh, this must be the monster for this movie.
Yeah, exactly.
We're meeting him early. So you know this monstrous figure and the thief kind of get in a fight. They like smash a bunch of the science equipment. The glass case breaks, as well as the canister falls, and it opens, and there's a head inside.
Dun, dun, dun.
So very much like the hat box from the last movie.
Exactly. And of course that scares the thief off, and he is ready to leave.
And he makes it out. He gets out alive, and then it turns out that we were right all along.
Oh no! It was Frankenstein!
He has just a mask. He just pulls off this burned face mask, and it's just Peter Cushing.
This is literally the first time he's actually gone out of his way to hide his face, I think, at all.
Yeah, he had the little domino mask in the one movie. But yeah, he's serious about hiding this time. So he's got the burn mask. He's got the fake abandoned house so that he can work in the basement and people think that there's nobody in there.
Well, he's serious for now for hiding. And then that just goes right out the window after the introduction.
Oh, yeah. And so then he decides he has to clean up the mess from the fight. He just like opens a big hole in the floor and just
apparently it's leading to a river or some form of water.
Yeah, and he just starts like shoving everything down the hole.
I mean, that's my kind of waste disposal, you know, just shove it all down in the river, let the river handle it. Nothing bad could happen from that.
I want a river under my house so I could just sweep into the hole and I don't need to keep up with anything.
Exactly. Come on. That's genius.
But so then we meet the inspector who like finds the thief who has escaped but is like covered in blood. And so he like, you know, is obviously like, what's going on here?
Yeah, why are you covered in blood?
And so the thief like points him to the house. Then like meanwhile there's like another police officer comes and is like, we found a body. We found Dr. Heidegger's headless body near his near his office.
Yeah.
So, you know, things are already sort of like starting to converge.
Right. By the way, this has only been 5 minutes. All this has happened.
This movie is jam-packed. I'm guessing that this is going to be a long episode for us just because the movie is a little long and is also just full. Like it is
full of stuff.
I think I have the most notes for this movie of any that we've done so far.
I got there.
But yeah, so they, you know, the info that they get from the thief plus the headless corpse, they immediately go into the abandoned house and search. And they end up, you know, they find some of the lab equipment in the basement, but nothing else. Whoever was here is gone now. And they start kind of like beginning this sort of like police procedural type investigation that sort of runs parallel for the rest of this movie. Like it's just like we get Frankenstein's story, then we get the inspector stuff.
Right.
And like his initial plan is to look for recently sold lab gear or missing bodies. So he kind of sends out some officers. And like this inspector, he's kind of a jerk, but like he's fun as a viewer, but it's like anybody who tries to like help him or suggest anything, he's like he's like, I know more than you, don't try to tell me how to do my job, I'm the inspector.
Right, but everyone agrees the culprit is a doctor.
Oh yeah.
And he's refusing to accept this.
Yeah, that gave me like strong like Jack the Ripper vibes, you know, like that, or like the Black Dahlia. Like I feel like there's every now and then there's just like a very precise murder that takes place, and everybody immediately jumps to this has got to be a doctor.
Right.
That's the only answer. Then we get the inspector is like talking to like a morgue attendant about the body, and he says something about like that they're looking for a scarred man. Right. So here's where the mask really comes in handy. So like the thief has given them a bad description, and you know now they're kind of like working at a deficit because they're not actually looking for the right person.
Exactly. But they learned that one of the stolen bodies was that of Dr. Hermann Streck.
So then Dr. Frankenstein arrives at an inn, he is in a carriage. He arrives, and there's like a young woman. This is the Anna Spangler we mentioned earlier, who's kind of like running the boarding house, and he kind of flirts with her a little bit, and then signs in as Dr. Fenner. Which, considering the fake names that he's used in the past,
this is the best.
Yeah, much better than Dr. Stein.
Right.
Then we cut right to a mental hospital. This movie is just quick.
By the way, I love the joke here. As Miss Spangler or Anna Spangler is telling him, "Oh yeah, it's very quiet here." Immediately, a woman screams out once we cut to the insane asylum.
Yeah, it immediately cuts to this woman. She's having some sort of attack. She's just screaming bloody murder. She's not physically in pain that you can tell. She's just panicked, and the guards are kind of trying to calm her down and hold her in place. They kind of hold her down.
By the way, she's only known as the Mad Woman in the credits. That's it.
Yeah, she's in 2 scenes. They do a good job because she is sort of a necessary plot device in a little while, and it's nice that they kind of set her up in this scene so that it pays off. Yeah. So the doctors are kind of leave her room, and then in the hallway they're discussing this other patient. They talk about that he was a brilliant man at one time, but now he's just kind of lost.
Yeah, that would be Dr. Brandt.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we get Frankenstein, who goes to a men's club, which I think was a common British thing at the time. It was I feel like Sherlock Holmes went to them a lot in the stories. It was just a place where men could go and play chess and smoke cigars and sit around in high back chairs and
See, I thought this was the common room of the boarding house.
Oh,
because those are all I thought they were all boarders. Professor Richter is.
I think you're right. Because then a little later, I didn't think about that. Yeah, I think you're definitely right. But that was the vibe that it gave me watching it the first time, and I didn't make the connection. But yeah, you're absolutely correct.
Yeah, so these are all just kind of dudes hanging out, right?
Yeah,
no girls allowed.
Yeah. Frankenstein's kind of over in a corner by himself, but there are 2 other guys, and they're discussing Dr. Brandt. The rumors are that he was trying to create life as well, and that he may have even had some sort of correspondence with, the mysterious Dr. Frankenstein, and that maybe they were even working together. And so, of course, the actual Dr. Frankenstein sitting right near them is, his ears perk up at this, and he's listening carefully.
Oh, yeah. And he goes into a self-righteous tirade about how these men they're not prepared to progress for the future. And how if they kept things the way that they wanted to, they would still be eating their food in caves and wiping their greasy hands on their woolen or animal hide clothes. But he does deliver a good burn on Professor Richter by saying, "I do think your lapel has a little bit of grease on him."
Yeah. So this is again it's similar to when they were in the pub. He can't keep his mouth shut. He tries to hide, but as soon as he's provoked, he immediately snaps. And this definitely could have clued people into the fact that he's Dr. Frankenstein.
Well, he has a point that it did. These guys are not clearly not as smart as they thought they were, as it didn't clue them in.
Yeah. He was lucky this time for sure.
Oh yeah.
Then we get the young doctor from the asylum that we kind of briefly saw earlier. He arrives at the end. Yep,
sorry,
Carl Holtz.
I'm going to do that bit 2 more times. I'm telling you that now.
We find out that he is Anna's fiance, and we also find out that he has been secretly stealing meds to help Anna's sick mother.
Yeah, this is an early 1900s cocaine dealer.
Yeah. But as luck would have it, or not have it, Dr. Frankenstein is right outside the room and hears this whole conversation, and not only hears the conversation, but finds a prescription pad or something on the ground.
He fell out of Dr. Holst's jacket. Apparently he wasn't paying that much attention to his drugs, and just lets it fall on the ground.
Yeah, so he has them red-handed and immediately uses this to his advantage, and is blackmails them basically, and is this is my house now.
Right.
You gotta kick all the rest of these guys out, and I'm gonna build my lab, and you're gonna be my lab assistants, and you can't really do anything about it. Otherwise, your mom's not going to get her meds, and you're going to get fired as a doctor. And
you're both going to jail for 20-something years.
Yeah, like your lives are ruined unless you do exactly what I say.
Yeah. This clearly is the worst Frankenstein. Just the fact that he was like, I've got you by the cojones. You do anything I don't like, you're gone.
So immediately, it cuts to Anna like evicting all the other tenants, and they're all really, upset and confused. Like, what happened? Why are you just kicking us out so unceremoniously? Like, we didn't do anything. And she doesn't really have any response. Like, she has no justification for it that she can like admit. So she just has to stand there and take it, basically.
Right. It's not like she can just go, "Hey, Dr. Frankenstein doesn't want you here, so you gotta leave."
Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, it is like, don't get me wrong, these guys kind of suck too, but not as bad as Frankenstein.
Yeah. And of course, they're part of her income too, so she's giving that up in the process.
Right.
And then we cut back to the police again and sort of continue that storyline. They discuss that there was like a rumor of some stolen lab equipment, and then they immediately they talk about stolen lab equipment, so of course it's got to be a doctor. They continue on that kind of thread.
Right.
And then we see Frankenstein and Holst, and they're
Holst. All right, that's two. All right.
And they're like in a storeroom. So I don't know if this is like they're doing it again, or this is like it's kind of strange. Like they kind of back up a little bit.
It's really weird. It's like they are going to go ahead and lift some equipment, but of course the caretaker comes in at this point, and they've got to hide.
Yeah, and again, like earlier, they hide for a little bit, and it seems like it's going okay, and then he ends up seeing them, and
specifically Holst's foot, just the tip of his foot,
and surprisingly, Holst is the one who responds, and he like.
But hold on, can we say this is the most unmeasured response I think I've seen? Maybe not in this whole series, but at least for a while.
Yeah, and if Frankenstein had done it, especially Frankenstein in this movie, you'd be like, sure. But no, it's Holst. He just like panics, pulls out a knife, and just stabs the guard to death.
Yeah. But hey, Frankenstein is obviously okay with this. As a matter of fact, he has a smirk on his face because he now has even more dirt on Holst.
Yeah. So then we immediately get to the next scene is Holst talking to Anna, and like you could tell he's messed up over the fact that he just committed murder. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have the constitution that Frankenstein does as far as this kind of stuff goes, and he's like, you could still get out, Anna. Like you should run while you can. I'm trapped now even more than ever, but I can maybe appease Frankenstein and you can escape and he will leave you alone.
Yeah, but she's not having it. She loves Holst. She's going to stick around.
Yeah. And so at that point, Frankenstein strolls into the room, and this is actually when he finally tells them that he's Dr. Frankenstein.
Right. Because what are they going to do at this point? He's like, listen, you committed a murder. You're dealing the drugs. This truly is my house. I'm Frankenstein. Try to do anything, and you're going to get the worst thing that has ever happened to you.
Yeah, exactly. And like he even goes as far as like he like physically threatens Holst and like slaps him across the face.
Right.
Then we see where like having the place to live and the place to set up the lab is all well and good, but the real thing that he wants out of this arrangement is he needs help getting Brandt out of the asylum, and who better than like a doctor in the asylum to help him with that.
Right, yeah, he's going to cure Dr. Brandt's insanity.
And just to like really, really like hammer home how much he sucks in this movie, like Frankenstein, they're like looking at the map and he's like, "Oh, Anna, go get us some coffee."
Gosh.
Like she's a secretary.
Right. And that's effectively what he treats her like.
So he sends her out. Then we get another scene at the asylum where Brandt's wife is coming in for a visit. And the doctor kind of says, like, the only way that you're able to do these visits is that we have to heavily sedate him because something's going on with him and he just flies into, like, a murderous rage occasionally. And he's a danger to himself and others. So, like, we have to sedate him just so that it's safe for you to be in the same room with him.
And when I heard that, my mind immediately goes to, is she actually Dr. Brandt? And she put her wife's brain in the other body or something like that?
Oh.
And that's what I was thinking, but no, I'm going to go ahead and ruin that now. No, that's not the case. She is just Mrs. Brandt, and that's just something they say. Because apparently he gets erratic when she gets near him.
Yeah, that's a really, interesting idea, though. My first thought was just oh, this is going to come back to bite them because they're going to take Brandt, and he's going to go into a murderous rage and attack them.
Yeah, that's definitely more accurate to what happened, but I'm being imaginative and stuff. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I think that would be a great movie. That sounds like a lot of fun. But so yes, they we end up in the next scene they kind of continue discussing the heist plans. Frankenstein talks about his experiments. This is where which surprisingly admits that Brandt was better at it than him.
Right.
That he was more successful, and so he needs Brandt. That's why why he's arranging this whole asylum heist, basically.
Yeah. So that's also kind of a weird thing, though, is that Brandt apparently figured a better way to transfer brains than Frankenstein.
And he says that each time we kind of get a slight variation on what Frankenstein actually wants.
Right.
Sometimes he just wants to extend life for people, but then there was that movie where he's that's easy, I don't care. I want to actually create a new life.
Right.
And, we've done all the soul stuff and everything, but this time he wants to be able to preserve great minds. He thinks it's an injustice to the human race that, there could be a brilliant genius who could contribute so much, but then their body wears down and they die, and the brain has to die with the body.
Right, and everything's lost at that point. I mean, that's what he says, but, this Frankenstein's sketchy, so...
Yeah. So then, we get, another brief cop scene where they're looking at the murder scene with the guard at the lab, the lab storage facility or whatever, and then immediately cut back to Frankenstein and Carl sneaking into the asylum.
Oh, well, there's the subplot about Holst having to sedate the mad woman because she's going to scream and ruin the plot.
Yeah, they discussed that a little bit in advance, and so they get there, and that's before they even get there. He's going to sedate her earlier. I was thinking he does it in. Yep, you're right. So and that's it's so good. So he's going to sedate her in advance before they sneak in that night, so that she'll just be out cold all night long. Because she's gonna. The fear is that she's gonna act like an alarm system. They're gonna stir her awake in the night, and she's just gonna go into a screaming fit, and everybody's gonna come running.
Yeah, I mean, we all already know she has a good set of lungs. So.
Yeah. But yeah, so as he's getting ready to try to sedate her, the head doctor peeks in and is "What are you doing?"
Right. Why are you sedating her?
And he's just she just seems upset all the time. I thought sedating her would help. And the doctor's I mean, maybe, but that's my call. I would say that and tell you to do it. You don't just go do that.
Yeah,
that's not how this
sedate
works.
People. What are you doing? Planning a heist or something? Jeez.
So he's already kind of in a deficit. He's in trouble. And so now they have to go in without her being sedated.
Oh yeah, Frank's let's do it anyway.
And the next scene is so funny to me. So they see a guard who's asleep, and they go through this whole elaborate sort of Mission Impossible thing to get the keys from the guard without him waking up. They're reaching through the bars, and it's this whole elaborate thing. They get the keys and don't let him jingle.
Right, and then once he gets them, he just pimp hands the guard to knock him out even more.
Yeah, they could have just let him sleep, or they could have just knocked him out and not had to go through the charade of trying to be sneaky.
I mean, to be fair, though, if they had sedated the lady earlier, maybe this wouldn't have needed to be done, but also, why be quiet about it? That quiet? He's literally leaning over the banister, gently plucking the keys out of the guard's hands, and it's okay, yeah, and then you're just gonna smack it as hard as you can. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it definitely it made me laugh pretty loud.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
So then they get to Brandt's cell, and they try to sedate him. And again, doesn't work so well. He starts to fight. He goes into his murderous rage, which wakes up the woman, who then starts screaming. It's just nothing's going right.
They knock the needle out of Frankenstein's hands, and it clatters to the ground.
So instead, he just punches Brandt and knocks him out too. So he's just, I mean,
gets him right in the solar plexus.
Yep. So then they manage to like get out of the asylum, like right as police start noticing that Brant is missing. So the police are like setting dogs loose to chase after, and you get like them running through the woods.
Right.
But as they have kind of thought this all through, they come upon Anna in a carriage as they've planned. So they hop in the carriage, and the getaway is successful.
All right, it worked. But then we go into the inspector, who is letting Miss Brant know that her husband was abducted.
Yeah, and he's really wants to be really clear with her. Like, he did not escape; he was taken, and we want to know. We want to try to figure out why. Like, who would want him, and for what reason?
Right.
And so she's asking questions. Like, she's curious about what's going on here as well. And the inspector is just a jerk to her. Like, he's not helpful at all. And he's like, you don't ask the questions, I ask the questions, basically. Mm-hmm. Then we get back to the doctor and the lab and everything, and we find out that somehow in the process of all this, Brant has had a heart attack. Right. Probably because he got punched in the solar plexus.
That'll do it. It was an anime punch just about, too,
So Frankenstein's convinced that, like, Brant will die within the next couple of days.
Yeah, so we gotta swap brains.
Yeah, so of course, if we want to proceed with this whole plan, we got to keep the brain alive, so we're going to have to move it to a new body.
Right. And of course, at this point, Carl's like, wait a second. if we're swapping his brain with somebody else's, that else must die. And Frank's like, well, you've committed one murder, what's another?
Yeah. You got to break a few eggs to make an omelet, right?
And then we get that wonderful mention of Burke and Hare and
Dr.
yeah. Knox.
Yeah, we've talked about them a couple of times in the past, but this is the first time they're like explicitly mentioned in any of the ones we've watched.
Oh yeah.
So not only does Frankenstein say like we got to do this body swap, but he's like, you're gonna do this, like right. I've got enough dirt on you, like go kill Professor Richter and bring him back.
Right.
So he leaves to go do that, and then like we see Anna later just wandering the house, like she wakes up in the middle of the night. And
of course she's in her negligee or her nightgown, and yeah, this is when it kind of starts getting a little greasy.
Yeah, this is definitely we've talked about like the hammer thing, like the hammer girl was like a big thing.
Yeah.
And at least in this case, like there's sort of a she did wake up and this is her like sleep attire, so
right.
It's a little less gratuitous than some of the other, the Burgermaster's wife in the one movie or whatever.
Once again, the Burgermaster's wife.
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely, she's got a very low cut, top that she's going around in, and very like flowy sort of like pants and everything. And she ends up finding the professor's body, and Holtz is like, we'll be free. He kind of tries to comfort her, and it's like, this is what had to happen. We're kind of stuck. But hopefully once this, he gets done with what he wants, he'll leave us alone.
Yeah, because that's what this Frankenstein's known for. But of course, they have their little conversation. And then Frankenstein goes ahead and he's like, and why don't you go to bed and let us, take care of Dr. Richter.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So he infantilizes her. So... yeah.
Yeah, and then it just gets worse because he sends Holtz back to the asylum, just comes up with an errand for him basically to get him out.
He's got to maintain cover, right?
Yeah, and so while Holtz is gone, Frankenstein goes into Anna's room.
Yeah, content warning starts here once again. So.
Yeah. And, like, he kind of threatens her a little bit and then, like, just throws her on the bed. And, I mean, it's...
Yeah.
It is what it is. It's, as far as rape scenes go, it's not terribly graphic, but it's still very unpleasant. Like, he's, like, tearing into her top and, just got her pinned down.
Yeah. It's mostly alluded to, so it's not like, I spit on your grave or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah. It's nowhere near that bad, but, I mean, it is... there's no question of it as to what's happening. Like, you definitely know where this is going.
And he's scary about it, too. It's like I think that this Frankenstein would just have killed Anna if she had put up a fight.
Yeah. Like, it is wild seeing Cushing do this. Like, I mean, every version of Frankenstein that he's played has been sort of like above everyone and sort of like, but like this is a level of like malevolence that we've not seen from him.
Right.
And
I would say the previous Frankensteins were amoral, whereas this one is just, as you said, malevolent.
Yeah. And I mean, he does, he plays it well. Like it's a hard scene to watch because they both do so good. Like they do such a good job of making it hard to watch.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, and then we get more with the police again, and they kind of are continuing their process. They have found that the professor is missing, and it's the inspector. He's talking to the press, basically. Yeah. It's almost like it's sort of like an anti-press conference, because he's like, so here's what's going on. Now you can't tell anybody about it.
Right.
Yeah,
but why would you tell them?
I guess he was afraid it was going to get out one way or the other, and he wanted to like put a lid on it or something. So
I guess maybe he's like, I'm going to give you the pre-scoop, and then once it's done, you can do the thing.
Yeah. And so then we go back again to the experiments. Now we've got Frankenstein and Carl, who are prepping Brant and the professor for surgery.
Yeah, Anna pops in, and obviously it's super uncomfortable. But Anna says nothing and just leaves after a second.
Yeah, and it's kind of unclear at this point if Carl knows or not.
Right.
But yeah, the tension in the room is palpable. And so then they go into their whole the brain swap. We get we get a fish tank scene because we need a fish tank scene. They pull the brain out, drop it in the water.
Man, when they were sawing, the saw sounds on that skull just rattled me. It sounds like someone sawing on an actual skull with an old garden variety saw.
Yeah, and this looks like what brain surgery still looks like today. Like they took a scalpel, they cut the skin, and then they go in with the saw, like the bone saw, and do the skull. And then we actually even get a little bit more brain surgery momentarily. Right. It's kind of strange. So they swap the brain, and then they decide to bury Brant's dead body. So now we've got Brant's brain in Richter, and Brant's body that was going to have a heart attack and is useless now. So they bury it in the garden of the house. So right on the property, which I guess crowded London streets. It's not like they could have taken it anywhere.
And then of course this wonderful Frankenstein requests 2 boiled eggs in the morning. Gosh, this guy from Anna, of course.
Yeah, and of course, insult to injury,
right?
Demanding food from this woman that you've already, victimized in so many different ways.
But now the cops are here. They're searching all the houses on the street.
Yeah, and Anna, in spite of everything that's going on, I guess, again, to protect herself and Carl, she overhears what's happening, down the street and runs to warn them. And so then they go into this sort of elaborate ruse to throw the police off.
Right. Carl grabs a little paint can and doffs the painter's jacket and just starts touching up the stairs.
And this scene goes on for a while, and he just paints the same spot the whole time. But
this is kind of tense though, because the cops are walking out throughout the house, and you're like, oh no, are they going to find the body?
Yeah. And so they don't find the body, and they also don't find the lab, because they have wallpapered over the door to the lab to just match the wall.
What did they do to the knob? Where did the knob? Did they just take off the knob, I guess?
I guess so.
Okay.
But somehow that works. The police do not, and so Carl's kind of standing in that general area. So I guess that's the deal, is he's sort of blocking the seam a little bit, so it's a little less clear. And you can tell the police are kind of something seems fishy here, but we don't really have anything to go on. So they end up leaving, and they have a conversation with Carl where they're like, hey, aren't you a doctor? And he's like, but this is my fiance's house. So, she's just putting me to work, doing some paint,
Just touching up this one spot multiple times.
Yeah, which, we've all been there. Like,
Yeah.
you got your real job, and then you got stuff you got to do at home. So that does make sense, and the police are convinced, and they...
I do love the joke that apparently this, Sergeant Brenner was his name? Something like that? It was
I think
Brenner. But he's like, well, it's a good thing he's a doctor because he's a crappy painter.
Yeah. Like, keep your day job.
Right, exactly.
Then meanwhile, we get Frankenstein again, and he's working with Carl again, and they're talking about the healing process with Brant's brain. Mm-hmm. He says it's going pretty well for the most part, but he's figured out that the reason that Brant had gone insane was that there was some pressure on the brain, so he drills a hole in the skull to relieve the pressure.
Yeah, I was actually worried about that. I was like, wait a second, you had the skull cap there. You could have just scraped it out or something. But yeah.
I guess they just wanted to show some more sort of brain surgery stuff, but yeah, it seemed like you could have done that earlier much more easily.
But he does say that we have to destroy the cells in the brain to somehow make them heal, which doesn't sound right to me. But okay, you're the doctor. We'll go with it.
Yeah.
The trepidation is a painful scene.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it looks and feels very real. Again, like this, because again, this is you've seen this for real. This is an actual brain surgery that really happens. So they do it well here, where it feels very, very real.
Yep.
And then meanwhile, Frankenstein tells them that once Brant wakes up, he will finally leave them, and they can go back to their normal lives.
Right, because we can trust this Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Right.
And then he's later walking outside, not trying to hide his identity now.
No.
And
why would he do that?
Yeah, and Mrs. Brant sees him, and of course, she remembers him.
Wait, that's the weirdo that sent letters to my husband before he went insane.
And it's at first she's like, that guy looks familiar, but
right.
You can it's pretty, you can tell she doesn't say anything, but you can tell she's like, who is that guy? I know him from somewhere.
Right.
And then we get back to poor Anna. She's out in the garden, and this lady peeks her head in and is like, hey, I'm getting ready to go to the store. Do you need anything? Like a neighbor, just kind of popping in, and
geyser of water just shoots out of the ground.
Yeah, a water main bursts right where they buried Brant. So one could assume that probably they nicked the pipe while they were, digging the grave or something, and it finally burst.
And of course, Anna notices Brent's dead body is the hands flopping because it's being knocked around by water. So she's like, oh, crap.
So she sort of just yells at her neighbor and is like, leave me alone. I don't need anything from you. Get out of here.
Yeah, go to the water, not water company. What were they called? The water bureau or district or something like that?
Yeah, it was, was it authority? It was some kind
water authority, yeah. You're right.
And so the lady's like, fine, and so she takes off, and Anna immediately has to quickly dig up a body,
right.
And find a new place to hide it and make the garden look normal again.
Right. So she's soaking wet. And you can tell, the actress Veronica Carlson, she does a great job of just giving you the I'm done with this crap face. She's like, I've been through some shit,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, then
Miss Brad follows Frankenstein home, right?
Well, we get first. She looks through the newspaper, and there's a political cartoon that's lampooning Brant and Frankenstein, and it's this great sort of it looks like political cartoons do now, where it's the exaggerated caricature faces of Peter Cushing and Dr. Brant, and she's like, oh. That's who that was.
Right.
So then she immediately follows him home, he's working on experiments. She shows up, and he's immediately just oh, well, you saved me some trouble. I was going to call you.
Right.
This works out perfectly. He's immediately just turns on the charm, and he's like, so I would have gone to you first, but I knew you'd probably be kind of skeptical, so I just had to take the initiative myself. I did steal Brant from the asylum, but that's because, I knew I could save him.
Could help him, right? It was me. I was the only one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he takes her down to the lab, and, Brant is, Brant's
Semi-con.
brain, who is in Richter's body.
Right.
But thankfully, his face is all wrapped up with bandages, so she doesn't know that it's not the Brant that she knows.
Yeah, and of course he's hooked up to a feeding tube that's full of milk, which I don't know how good that would be, but maybe it would work just fine. I mean, I guess it has protein.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so... And, of course, Frankenstein's like, listen, ask him some questions. He'll raise his hand if it's true, and he'll, like, kind of swipe left or right if it's false.
Yeah, it's like a nod and a shake your head kind of
Yeah.
thing, but just with his hand.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's working right now. To full
Yeah.
capacity.
And so that pretty much convinces her. She asks him, she goes through a couple questions and kind of like gives him some like red herring questions to like make sure that, he's on the right, like that it's really him. Mm-hmm. And, she's convinced by the time she leaves that like, this really is Brant and that Frankenstein really has, saved him. Mm-hmm. And so as soon as she leaves though,
well, I like how he's sending her off though. He's like, yeah, tell you what, we're going to come back in the morning. He should be fully awake. It'll be great. We'll have conversations like old times. It'll be awesome. Then the moment she walks out the door, he turns around and is like, pack up, we're leaving now. We're getting out.
Yeah, it's so good. And so, yeah, they do. They, like, end up, fleeing with Brant in a carriage. Mm-hmm. And then Mrs. Brant shows up at the house the next morning and finds that they're all gone. The house is just empty. So she goes to the inspector and is like, something weird's going on. I didn't want to tell you because, I thought that things were okay, but... apparently this doctor had my husband and, he was in this house and so maybe you should go check it out. So yeah, sure enough, they search the home and this time they've got a little bit more probable cause. So they search a little deeper and of course now Brant's body's not, carefully buried in the garden. It's just like shoved in a corner basically.
Yeah, right under some floorboards, pretty much.
Yeah.
And
so
like,
they find
okay.
it. And they're like, yeah, so clearly pieces are starting to come together for the police. They kind of know what's going on a little more.
Right, that's when you insert, that was a fucking lie.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Frankenstein and Anna and Carl are back in his abandoned home from the beginning of the movie. Because they're just out of places to hide, basically. And he's just hoping this will hold him over for long enough to get things done.
Oh yeah, but Carl Holst realizes that all right, so this is getting way out of hand. Anna, I want you to get some sedatives. We're gonna make our break for it.
Yeah. So he comes up with this sort of elaborate plan where, like, when I say the code word, do this and all that, he like is gonna go out to the carriage to get some stuff ready while she's getting the sedatives.
Right, exactly.
Meanwhile, Brant finally wakes up and is immediately like realizing that this is not his body. He's
Right.
very confused, and it kind of like it plays for a little bit where it's like, the body feels weird and the hands don't look right, and then finally, eventually we get like the mirror shot where he's like, this isn't my face, like what's going on here?
These aren't my beautiful hands. This isn't my beautiful face.
How did I get here?
Yeah, exactly. But of course he has this weird rubber, like shiny head cap. Of course it's meant to look like, obviously he's had his head sawed open, but it's very glaringly like everything's shiny on his head right now.
Yeah. And so then Anna comes in to get the sedative, and Brant's awake, and she was not expecting that.
Yeah.
And she's frightened, and he's sort of, he's still sort of out of sorts, and so he's kind of not quite there.
He's like, chill though. I'm all right. I'm not gonna hurt you.
But it's just too scary, and she like grabs a scalpel and just stabs him.
Right. just for no reason. Just I guess because she's scared and terrified. That makes sense. Yeah.
But so then he takes off. She's still got like the bloody scalpel in her hand. Brant runs out. Meanwhile, like Frankenstein saw that Carl went out to the stables and kind of sees what's going on. He figures out what's going on. And they fight.
Right. It's a doctor fight. But I do like how Frankenstein's like, "Hey Carl, what you doing?"
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, he has no, it's obvious. He has no good defense.
Yeah.
So they fight, and then, like, we just get back to Frankenstein coming back inside, finding that Brant is gone, and then finding Anna all shaken up, holding a bloody scalpel.
Now, see, at this point, I was like, "Oh, this is prime stabbing opportunity, Anna. This is your time to shine."
And yeah, she definitely fumbles the ball on that one.
Right?
So she's like, yeah, she tells him everything that happened. She's like, yeah, he scared me, I stabbed him, and he ran away. And Frankenstein immediately, like,
the most thoughtful, measured thing he could do, grabs the scalpel and stabs her back.
It's like such a quick, fluid, but like he just pulls it out of her hand, turns it around, shoves it right back into her stomach.
Poor Anna can't catch a break.
Yeah, I mean, like, he has just mistreated her terribly throughout every scene of this movie. Yeah. So then Carl comes in, finds her laying there. I can't remember if she's, like, dying or fully dead at this point, but
at this point she's fully dead, and he's crying over her body.
So then we get Brant, who is now gone to his home.
He performed surgery on himself. He sneaks into that little surgery thing and, like, apparently does something on his own stomach.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, so he doesn't die immediately, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and he eventually ends up, like, watching his wife through the night. Yeah. Like, he comes in, she's asleep, and he just kind of, like, watches her all night. And it's kind of it's a strange scene because, like, you can tell he's kind of conflicted. Like, he knows she's not going to recognize him, and possibly that, like, he's going to make her life worse by, like, coming back into it at this point. Yeah, but also, she's his wife, and he loves her, and he wants to be back with her. Yeah. And so, like, it's kind of... It's strange the way it's played, because, like, you just see him watching her for a while, and then it's, like, morning, and she wakes up, and there's a note by the bed, and you're like, oh, okay, so that's how he's decided to play this, is, he moved on, he left, and is giving her this note.
Wrote a Dear Ella letter, and then...
Yeah. But so she starts reading it, and then, like, it turns out that, no, he's in the room.
Honey.
He's
just behind
hiding.
The screens.
Yeah, she's got, like, the dressing screens that, you see a lot in these kind of older movies. Mm-hmm. And he's just like, you can't see me. You don't want to see my face. So, like, I'll stay back here. But eventually, Frankenstein is going to come for me. Like, this isn't safe. And he, like, decides to lock her in the room.
Yeah, you can't go anywhere. You're stuck here.
Yeah, you got to stay safe until we deal with Frankenstein. I don't know what's going to happen there. Mm-hmm. But she, like, gets out and does end up, seeing him and realize, seeing this man that does not look like her husband.
Right. And of course she faints as soon as she sees him.
Yeah. And then when she wakes up, like, she's kind of still in denial and she won't believe that it's really him.
Right. Until he starts bringing up some past details, and he's like, listen, I was passed out. You asked me some questions. I raised my hand or flagged it off if, it wasn't right. So, it's me.
Yeah. And he's like, Frankenstein did this to me and I want revenge. Right. Like, that's what this is about at this point is I have to get him back for what he's done to me.
Right.
So then he just starts, like, pouring gasoline all over the house.
Or at least kerosene. He's pouring kerosene from the lamps. Just dousing the whole place in it. He's got, like, 10 to 30, well, that's a big number. About 30 lamps full of kerosene all around the house.
Yeah, so, I mean, he's putting gas, or, like, he's setting the house up, obviously, to burn the house down. Mm-hmm. Tells Mrs. Brant to escape. She needs to leave before things get bad. And, indeed, Frankenstein does arrive. And, he kind of does his whole thing where he's like, join me. This is our chance. Like, we can
his Darth Vader moment.
Yeah. And, Brant's not having it at this point.
No. He's like, tell you what, you can find the notes in this house, or I'll shoot you with this pistol that my wife pulled on me a little bit earlier.
Yeah, so he kind of sets it's a great setup. He's just like, the notes are in the house. You're welcome to them if you can find them, and then he just starts lighting shit on fire.
Right. Every time Frankenstein goes to a door, he throws a lit lamp at that door, and it catches on fire. He's like, nope, that's not the right one.
Yeah. So So, we get, as many of these movies do, we end up in a burning building. But Brandt says, Mrs. Brandt is on her way to the police. So your window of opportunity here is growing shorter by the moment. So finally, like Frankenstein gets to the notes, finds the notes.
You forgot the part where Carl Holst, there's the third one, busts into the house and like Brandt just shoots him in the shoulder.
Oh yes, yeah.
And that does give Frankenstein the opportunity to go run and find the notes.
Yes. So he finally gets him. He gets outside and he's like, like it looks like he may have, won the day basically. Except then
he gets attacked by Carl again.
Yeah, Carl is injured, but he's okay. So he starts fighting with Frankenstein, and that slows him down enough that Brandt comes strolling out of the house and just like instantly KOs Holt. Like he's just like, I don't have time for you at all.
Poor
just punches
Carl.
him.
He can't catch a break. Like, and well, look at Brandt. He's like, oh, this guy could be helping me. And said, no, I'm just going to KO him, grab Frankenstein into a fireman carry, and we're just going to go into this burning building.
Yeah. So yeah, again, this one has a little bit of a Universal vibe because it's like knocks out Carl, throws Frankenstein over his shoulders, strolls into the building on fire, and then it just like the end, and we get the credits rolling over like footage of the house just continuing to burn.
Abrupt ending. Yeah. But yeah.
So I mean, I get at this point everybody is pretty much dead except for
Carl.
Carl is passed out in the front yard. So like everybody's story is pretty well wrapped up.
Yeah.
Presuming that Brandt and Frankenstein die, which we obviously know is not going to be the case because we've got more movies to come.
Well, Brandt's probably dead. Frankenstein's not.
Yeah. But so it's abrupt, but it's a little bit more earned than some of our previous abrupt endings have been.
And they do linger on it for a good 3 to 4 minutes. Now there is one more thing I want to say because I always notice the weird things. So I noticed that as they were walking in, that a pillar fell down behind Brandt, and I'm like, could this be a callback to the reused scenes of Bela Lugosi as the monster or the creature?
Yeah, I would buy that. Like, I mean, clearly Hammer is nodding to Universal a lot, especially as these go on, like more and more. I definitely would buy that.
Yep, that's what I want to say at least. I mean, the ending where everything's on fire definitely harkens back to Universal. So.
And as far as like the abrupt thing goes, like one nice thing is, I mean, with conventions as far as like credits go have changed between Universal and Hammer. So like when those Universal movies would end, it would be like the end.
Right.
You'd get like one title card with the actors' names on it for like 10 seconds and that's it.
Right.
But like here you have like a credit roll like we see in movies today. It's obviously shorter, but you have some time with the credits. And like the choice of like leaving the building burning and it not being like, a freeze frame, but like actively like, fire moving, it doesn't feel as abrupt. Like you kind of get to linger on like, this is what's happening. This building is burning to the ground.
Right.
So I thought that was pretty effective. Like, they say like, watch the credits. It's, all these people worked on it. You should give them the respect of watching the credits. And I have to admit that a lot of times, if it's just black screen with white credits, I don't tend to sit there and watch them. But like there was something really like arresting about just watching this building burn. And I did just sit there and watch all through the credits because of it.
Right. Well, I mean, I kind of expected something to happen. I was like, oh, is Frankenstein going to jump out at the last second? But no, it's just this building is burning.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a nice conclusion. I was surprised. I feel like these Hammer movies, they've kind of gone up and down a little bit, but like, I really, really liked the last one and I really liked this one as well. Like, I think that they've kind of like found their footing as they've gone a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, this one definitely played into the tense scenes a lot more than the previous movies. They at least kind of let it linger. Is this Frankenstein? Is this the creature? And they just played with tension in so many more ways than the previous movies.
Yeah, and like we mentioned at the beginning, the stuff with the inspector sometimes feels a little unnecessary.
Yeah, did you notice he doesn't make an appearance at all after a certain point?
Yeah, and like he never like there's no confrontation between the inspector and Frankenstein.
No,
like
not at
that
all.
never happens.
Maybe there was meant to be one with Holt after the fact, but we never see that either. So
Yeah, I mean the only scene that he really like interacts with any characters that matter is the scene with Mrs. Brandt, really.
right.
But like you could basically cut out every one of his scenes in the movie and not really change the plot of the movie at all.
Right.
And
And
it
you'd
would just,
probably only
you know,
shave off 5 minutes max.
Yeah. Yeah, this movie, it's like an hour 40, which is, you know, not like long, especially by today's standards, but is a little longer than most of the movies we've watched so far for this. You know, horror and monster movies tend to pretty much sit right at the hour and a half mark. So, or even, you know, shorter for some of the early ones.
I think what our the first few movies were, maybe, was it 60, or not 60, maybe 90 minutes, if that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first ones were like an hour 10, hour 15.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
70
but-
minutes, yeah.
Yeah, but this one, yeah, I mean, like, I think that they just probably liked the actor from the last movie, and they were like, we could find something for you in this
Yeah.
one, and they kind of threw this plot together. And I mean, he's a lot of fun. He chews the scenery. He's a jerk in an entertaining way, which is fine. Like, you know, sometimes things don't necessarily have to be necessary to the plot for them to be like worth being in the movie, I guess.
Listen, plus the actor has the amazing name of Thorley Walters, okay? So, I mean, you've got to bring him back.
Yeah. And, you know, so other than, you know, the one very unpleasant scene, like, this is a pretty enjoyable movie. And as far as the unpleasant scene goes, you know, like, I know there's... The thing with scenes like that is, like, you know, obviously you don't want gratuitous rape scenes just throughout all of movies. Like, we don't want to look at that all the time.
Right.
But, like, in this movie, it sort of makes sense in terms of, like, the character that they're building for Frankenstein.
Yeah,
it's
this
still
one's
not-
a scumbag.
Yeah, it's not a fun scene to watch, but I don't feel like it's gratuitous, I guess.
Right.
You know, definitely if it's something that you don't want to see, I understand that. Like, I definitely get not being in the right headspace to want to see that,
Yeah.
like, at any particular moment or ever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and, you know, the unfortunate thing, I guess, is, you know, in a lot of cases when you have movies that have scenes like that, the payoff is that the woman gets to take revenge,
Right.
And in this case she does not, which
does
is
not.
you know, very unfortunate. I mean, we do, you know, Frankenstein seems to get, you know, punished in the end by going into the burning building, but, you know, you don't get the satisfying sort of payoff of, like, the woman getting revenge, so that makes it a little harder to stomach, I guess.
Especially after he treated her so poorly throughout the whole thing. Like we said, he infantilizes her, and then he's like, "Oh, you're also my secretary. Go get me food."
Yeah, like, it's, you know, from the first moment where he just kind of flirts with her, like, I mean, he just clearly has his eye on, like, just controlling her, and I mean, that's definitely, like, this doctor's MO, is that, like, it's all about control for him. Like, he just wants that power.
Right.
And yeah, so I mean, you know, it is what it is. It's an unpleasant scene that, you know, feels more important to the plot than the inspector stuff, honestly. So
Right.
there is that. I cannot remember how how he ends up getting out of that in the next movie. But, you know, we obviously know that he does not end up actually punished for his behavior in this movie, because we know there are sequels down the road.
Yeah, so we'll find out what's going on next week, I imagine.
I just completely blanked on the title of the next one.
Is it the Horror of Frankenstein, or?
Yes, yeah. So we've got 2 left. So we got Horror of Frankenstein next, and then the wonderfully titled Frankenstein,
the Monster from Hell.
But yeah, horror, because we're getting back into that trope of, like, the curse and the revenge and those ones that blur together. But yeah, so we'll find out what the Horror of Frankenstein is all about next week.
And as always, to be continued.
Looks like you survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velasquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Frankencast, or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.